You know, people don't know what they don't know. We're a consumer culture, right? So people are raised here basically to do one thing, and that's shop.
Two biggest tragedies that I can recall other than world wars concerning America was Kennedy's assassination and the attack on 9/11.
It is a changing point in American and world history. But I think if you look at what took place in the aftermath of 9/11, they don't flow from the events, they flow from policies that had been in the works for at least a previous decade.
Planes, guns, rockets, missiles to all these countries all over the world. So, you know, that's one of our biggest industries. It's our biggest export. Defense.
These are 1,100 who have staked their reputations and their licenses on the line based on this evidence for explosive controlled demolition of all 3 skyscrapers.
We have straight down symmetrical collapse.
This is so central to the future of this country. There's no future, as far as I'm concerned, if we don't get to the bottom of this.
The government has lied to us about the events of 9/11, and if the truth ever came out about it, maybe the wars would stop. The American people need to do this.
There is more. There is also the story of the value of the dollar, which may decrease. How does this happen? Why does the value of the dollar decrease and increase? That is the story of comparative prices. Prices change. Demand and supply, government controls, subsidies. Many things affect prices. We're talking about general price levels. As the general price level goes up, the value of the dollar goes down. As the general price level goes down, the value of the dollar goes up.
Additional credit available for many purposes. For a family to build a new home, for a merchant to enlarge and remodel his store, for a farmer to purchase new equipment, for a manufacturer to meet his payroll during slack selling periods, for a family to meet the cost of an expensive illness, and for many other good reasons why people are always needing more money, more credit than they have immediately available. Since most of these transactions involve the transfer of credit rather than cash, they increase the bank's deposits much more than they decrease its cash. Consequently, the bank needs to keep comparatively little cash on hand. By proper timing, new loans are made at about the same rate that old ones are repaid. Still, for all the work this credit has done, it has had little effect on the bank's cash. What then does the bank do with the rest of the cash the depositors have left with it? Some of it is put to work for the federal government, and in exchange for it, the bank holds bonds and other government obligations. Some of it is put to work for the community in which the bank is located, in exchange for municipal bonds and securities. Much of it goes to build up the industrial might of the nation, in exchange for corporate securities. And finally, some of the cash goes into Federal Reserve bank stock. Our Federal Reserve System serves as a banker's bank, facilitating the transfer of credit among member banks throughout the nation in the same way that each bank helps.
Capitalism? Well, why should there be any question about it? Hasn't it given us the highest standard of living in the world?
We don't have free enterprise, just bureaucratic red tape. The government ought to keep its hands off it.
We say we live in a capitalistic society.
does that mean? Well, we could point to certain fundamental ideas which we say are part of a capitalistic system. For example, private property. Individuals or corporations may own land, natural resources, buildings of all kinds, machinery and equipment for the production of goods, facilities for the transportation of goods, and the goods themselves. In a capitalistic system, these are usually private property. Another fundamental to capitalism is the profit motive. For the sake of profit, we cultivate the land. We build great factories to produce goods. We sell for profit. The goods thus produced, we transport over large distances, still for the sake of profit. Those who have savings often invest or lend them, hoping for a share of profit. And in so doing, help to build the industrial might of the nation. Some other ideas are basic to capitalism. Competition, freedom of contract, free enterprise. What do they mean? Could these rights exist without laws that define and protect them?
And so we'll see her on our way up.
Ja, kwe. Nezkai not leko kosha khazki ekida.
The people feel that through all these years, even to this point, 2011, nothing has happened. They have seen no action, seen no roads being improved, no housing being built. Very, very little has happened. So they're questioning, how long do we live like this?
The problem of democracy is very simple. Everybody today, every politician today says that his country, or politician in power, says that his country is democratic. However, for every country in the world, virtually every country in the world, there are people who say it's not democratic. There are people inside the country and there are people in other countries who will say about any country in the world, it is not democratic. So obviously there's a disagreement on what the word means in the first place. Literally, democracy means rule of the people. But there's no consensus about what it means to rule, and there's no consensus about who are the people.
I'm John Wayne. Is there any better or equal hope in the world, Lincoln asked, than the ultimate justice of the people? We Americans believe there is not. The stonework of our national life is made of this belief. We believe in many things, but this belief that man is a responsible being bears out our own unique stamp as a nation.
As a people, we are active and often noisy. We are industrious, oftentimes to the bafflement of ourselves and our friends. We relax as hard as we work. We are proud. We are sentimental. Beauty is of national concern to us. For some of us, its pursuit is a deadly serious pastime. The rest of us simply enjoy the results. Some of our national spirit shows up in the monuments we erect, the large ones and the small ones. It rings through the music, which animates us. Some difference of feeling. At other times we are united. We are all these things and many more, but above everything else we are free. We believe in the ultimate justice which we as free men can create.
Our heritage of freedom is our most priceless possession. Men before us have died to keep it alive, and men in our times have done the same. But although men have died to preserve it, it may die again. The glory of this heritage is the vision of life that it has given us. A life of dignity and nobility of spirit, such as men have never before been enriched by in the long march through the history they have recorded.
There is a phrase which recurs in our national documents, the literature of our story as a people, which points to the source of our belief in individual freedom, and defines perhaps better than any other the nub of the conflict between the opposing systems of values which sweep the world today. That phrase is, "This nation under God." That phrase is, "This nation under God." This nation under God. That phrase and others like it set the standard of our concept of man.
Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world. Thank you, good night, and God bless America.
непомерной стужей, словно криплый бой ночных часов, бой часов. Ты звал меня на ужин, я пришел, а ты готов. Нет ответа, нет ответа, тишина. Пальме страшно в час рассвета, слуги спят, и ночь бледна. В пышной спальне холодно и странно, в пышной спальне ночь мутна. Дева света, где ты, Донна, Анна, Анна, Анна? Тишина, только в грозном утреннем тумане бьют часы в последний раз. Донна, Анна, смертный дыхание, смертный час.
In the future days, as we seek to make the cure, we look forward to a world founded upon 4 essential human freedoms. The first is freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world. The second is freedom of every person to worship God in his own way everywhere in the world. The third, freedom from want, which translated into world terms means economic understandings which will secure to every nation a healthy, peacetime life for its inhabitants everywhere in the world. The fourth is freedom from fear, which translated into world terms means a worldwide reduction of armament to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor anywhere in the world. That is no vision of a distant millennium. It is a definite basis for a kind of world attainable in our own time and generation. That kind of world is the very antithesis of the so-called new order of tyranny which the dictators seek to create with the crash of a bomb. To that new order, we oppose the greater conception, the moral order. A good society is able to face schemes of world domination and foreign revolutions alike without fear. Since the beginning of our American history, we have been engaged in change, in a perpetual, peaceful revolution. A revolution which goes on steadily, quietly, adjusting itself to changing conditions, without the concentration camp or the quicklime in the ditch.
A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
My last political picture, Redacted, was not received well in my country because I was criticizing our foreign policy and the fact of what the hell were we doing in Iraq. And these terrible things happen when you put these young boys in these worlds where they don't understand what they're fighting for or why they're there. You can never say anything negative about the troops, even though they're over in a country they shouldn't be, doing things where a lot of innocent civilians are getting killed. They're all valiant warriors. Well, I think our foreign policy is incorrect. I don't think we should have been in Iraq at all. I think we were lied to by our government. And what happens when you put young boys in situations where they don't know why they're there, that we are repeated over and over again that, you know, sort of create this atmosphere. One is, America is the greatest nation in the world. I don't know how many times I've heard that. Why are we all over the world? Why are we in countries, you know, we have, you know, military presence all over the world? Why? Because we're the policemen of the world? Who decided this? Planes, guns, rockets, missiles to all these countries all over the world. So, you know, that's one of our biggest industries. It's our biggest export. Defense.
The Pentagon admits that they do selectively support some filmmakers and not others. If you are willing to give your script to the Pentagon and let them review it before you shoot the movie, and if they have any changes that they want to make, if they want to take out a portrayal of the military that they think is negative, that will hurt their recruiting goals, if they want that taken out and you agree that you'll take that out or to put in something that's more positive to help them recruit people, then they'll assist you with your movie. Then they'll grant you access to aircraft carriers and submarines and tanks and ships and planes. And if you don't play ball with them, they won't give you that stuff. Filmmakers who want military assistance, give them their scripts. They look at the scripts. They mark out what they think is they don't want and make suggestions on how to change the scripts to get approval. Then if they make a deal, they sign a contract. Then once they start shooting the film, they have a military minder who actually comes onto the set to make sure that it's shot just the way it was agreed to be done. And then before it's released to the public, it has to be screened in Washington, D.C. for the generals and admirals. They want people to see a movie and to be inspired by the heroics and join up and join the military. And if a film negatively portrays anyone in the military, they consider that not helping their recruiting goals. So they will not help any picture that shows war crimes, that shows military people doing bad things. The American people are seeing hundreds and hundreds of films and television shows that have been sanitized by the military, and to make military seem more heroic than it really is, and never wrong and always good, that this creates a false image in the American people's mind, and I think it's helped make the American people a more warlike people.
And the Economic Cooperation Administration was set up in Washington with a staff of economists stationed throughout the world. Its chief was automotive industrialist Paul Hoffman. From the day he became head of ECA, Hoffman made urgent trips to Europe for first-hand views of the situation. As ECA administrator, Hoffman is responsible for the amount each nation is allocated. Not only must American aid be dispersed for maximum immediate effect, but also with a long-range goal of making the aided nations eventually self-sufficient. Few men have ever borne a heavier responsibility.
cities are prime targets for atomic attack, but mass evacuation would be disastrous. An enemy would like nothing better than to have us leave our cities empty and unproductive. If an emergency should come, our factories will be battle stations. Production must go on if we are to win. Our offices and homes will also be posts of duty, not to be deserted. With the knowledge of the first atomic explosions to guide us, our chances for survival will be far better than those of the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, if we act on our knowledge and are prepared. The first job is to look over your own home for shelter possibilities. If you live in a private home that is well built, the cellar is the safest place to be. The lower you get, the more barriers there are likely to be against blast, heat, and radioactivity. Select the basement wall nearest the probable target area of your city. If the house is blown over, it will most likely fall away from this wall. If you have a workbench or strong table big enough to get under, move it into your shelter area near a wall or strong supporting column. If the time comes when you actually have to take shelter, lie under the table. If you live in a home that has no basement, choose a shelter area without windows on the ground floor. An interior hallway is probably best.
Here in Russia, you see the reason why we are spending billions of dollars in defense production. Why your family is paying the highest taxes in our history. The leaders of Russia tell us their only concern is the defense of their own nation. Is this so? Ever hear of Nikolai Lenin? He was the first leader of communist Russia. Leon Trotsky was another. Lenin lived but a few years, and out of the vicious struggle for power that followed his death, Joseph Stalin emerged as undisputed leader. Here was a new face, but in the background was an old one, Karl Marx. He established the ultimate aim of communism as world revolution. And the rulers of communist Russia, while firmly establishing their authority at home, created an international organization to stir up revolution throughout the world. Communism was on the march. Stalin was in the Kremlin. But what of the people? The proletarians who had sought to win a new world. Their new world might look promising, but although the land had been taken away from the capitalists, the workers didn't get it. Under communism, virtually everything belongs to the state. The individual has little right to own property or to plan his own life. He's told where to work with his employer. Little freedom to leave his job or seek a better one. Whereas we believe, and our religions teach, that the individual is all important. Communism denies religion. Debates the individual.
Before the dark powers of destruction, unleashed by science, engulf all humanity. Plan or accidental self-destruction. We dare not tempt them with weakness, for only when our arms are sufficient beyond doubt can we be certain beyond doubt that they will never be employed. But neither can two great and powerful groups of nations take comfort from our present course. Both sides overburdened by the cost of modern weapons, both rightly alarmed by the steady spread of the deadly atom, yet both racing to alter that uncertain balance of terror that stays the hand of mankind's final war. So let us begin anew, remembering on both sides that civility is not a sign of weakness, and sincerity is always subject to proof. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate.
Like the waters of a mighty ocean, people also represent a tremendous force, the understanding of which is of greatest importance to the American way of life. This force is known as consumer power. In response to the potential demands of consumer power, American initiative and industry have created in the United States the highest standard of living ever enjoyed by any people. American production has become the most efficient in the world, and as a result, our factories and industrial plants are turning out an ever-increasing amount of goods, things that people want and need.
He set a price for his creations that the consumer was willing to pay, and sales dollars poured in from satisfied customers. Jonathan had big dreams of the wonderful rewards of being in business for himself. But before he could buy what he wanted, his employees' wages had to be paid. He had to pay taxes. And his friends who helped finance the business had to be paid a return on their investment. When all of his bills were paid, Jonathan had to exchange his big dream for a little dream.
Mesdames, mademoiselles, it is the privilege of Alphonse, hat stylist to all the grand heads of Europe, to bring you hats with style so chic, a quality magnifique, and a price, ooh la la, so low. Come one, come all to the grand opening.
To meet competition, Jonathan had to plow part of his profits back into the business to develop a better hat. If customers approved the quality, style, and price of Jonathan's new designs, he still could make his dreams come true. With the passing years, this strong foundation of freedoms protected the dignity of the individual and his family, gave everyone the right to worship as he pleased, and promised anyone with ability and enterprise the opportunity to participate in the building of the American way of life as we know it today. A way of life that depends upon millions of thrifty Americans who send a portion of their savings to work in our business system each year. People from all walks of life.
These workers, these earners, are scientifically exposed again and again to the outdoor selling messages. Though grown-ups represent the greater part of any community's purchasing power, children very definitely are an influence in the purchasing of everyday commodities. So the complete poster showing must take into consideration the location of public schools with their daily attendance, which mounts up into hundreds of thousands. Since public schools are laid out primarily in accordance with population densities, the pattern governing school locations is a thoroughly accurate pattern of actual population distribution. For this reason, it is significant that the pattern of poster showings coincides with school concentration in the same areas. Chain store locations are another factor in determining the placement of poster showings. As everyone knows, chain store organizations make detailed and exhaustive studies of street traffic conditions before locating their stores. Hence, the pattern made by these stores represents a fairly accurate picture of the high points of retail trade. Because the 100% poster showing and chain store locations coincide, the advertiser's message is sure to reach the parade of buyers at the most logical time and place, when they are on their way to buy, and where they can immediately react to the buying suggestions made by the posters.
What are you girls doing? Looking for the
Drugstore
name of my
locations
China?
also form a guide for the planning of 100% poster showings.
Like what you see?
Here again, we see the pattern of the poster showings closely
see
follows that of
myself
the
in
store
this
locations.
plate and this glass.
In modern retailing,
and
supermarkets are an important factor.
You've
Carefully
discovered some
placed
way
in
to make
outlying
dishes
districts,
shine.
they have an
Discovered
average buying
something
radius
new.
of more than 3
now
miles,
I wash them the
which
way
is
you
unusual,
should.
of course, for a
Enjoy.
convenience goods store. Scientifically
right.
planned,
You can take
100%
real
poster
pride
showings
in your-
cover these same districts. Since every fourth purchase is an impulse purchase, these showings offer a golden opportunity to advertisers to identify their products to thousands of consumers on their way to buy at supermarkets. All receive their scientifically apportioned share of panels in the 100% poster showing.
Like magic.
Scientifically
It's
planned
called
showings
Bounty,
must
the
cover
new
more
paper
than just
towel
the
that
main
actually
thoroughfares of
attracts
transportation.
moisture.
They must
Just
be
watch
arranged to
Bounty
reach consumers in
attracting,
every walk of
absorbing
life as they go about their daily tasks. Each day, as thousands of persons visit the chain stores in their neighborhoods, their journey carries them past powerful messages advantageously placed on nearby poster panels. At night, as they visit their favorite movie houses,
I want you to meet a great
or sporting
new
centers.
star. The new 1953
And in the day while going
Chevrolet.
to and from the
Isn't
neighborhood
that a sight?
drugstores and centrally located supermarkets, the local service stations, or to work
That
in
it
any one of the
comes.
busy industrial
And gas
centers,
that's
these
extra
hundreds
fine.
of thousands of
There's a
buyers
smile
will be
for
briefly
every mile
receive
at
up-to-date
the SO
information
sign.
concerning products necessary to their
E-S-O makes your car go. Happy motoring.
Here's the thing.
Hair that grows, hair that goes to here, to there, to anywhere you like. It goes.
Here's new Velvet. Her hair grows, just like her cousin, Beautiful Chrissy. You can make Velvet's hair short, or make it grow.
Hair that grows, hair that
My skin's fresh and healthy looking. I guess it's 'cause I've gotten down to basics. You know, fresh air, sunshine, healthy foods, and lots of soap and water. Which the kids aren't too crazy about. We use ivory around this house.
Our federal taxes pay for irrigation and reclamation projects, for national parks, postal services, the Weather Bureau, and many other services. Our taxes have to pay for the enormous cost of past wars and provide the funds for a defense program which will ensure the safety of our country. In addition, all of us should be willing to pay whatever taxes are necessary to enable efficient government to improve or expand any essential service.
What I've argued for is a creation of a global reserve currency. Reserve currencies are, you might think of a store of value. And the dollar has been very unstable. Understandable given the difficulties, if you might say, of American economy. You know, our performance was not stellar. But the fact that in a modern globalized economy, 21st century, it's an anachronism that a single currency would play the pivotal role that the dollar has played. Dollar reserve currency system contributes to inequality, actually contributes to a weakening of global aggregate demand, a weak global economy, because if countries are setting aside literally hundreds of billions of dollars, you might say of precautionary savings, that's money not spent. Keynes argued for this 75 years ago. In the aftermath of the Great Depression, he understood how the links between UK's problem, the UK being the reserve currency then, and that if we're going to have global economic stability, we needed to move off of a single country being the reserve currency. Bretton Woods failed from his perspective in this respect.
Sharp, maker of the world's most complete line of electronic calculators, the LC8. World's smallest electronic calculator by Sharp. Price tag to match.
Americans are woefully uninformed, and it's not because they don't want to be informed. A lot of people really are concerned about what's happening, right, with the economy, with the wars we're fighting and so on. You know, people don't know what they don't know. Do you follow me? We're a consumer culture, right? So people are raised here basically to do one thing, and that's shop, if they can afford it, okay? It's not so easy anymore. If people are used to a kind of paper-thin, lightweight, completely distorted news coverage, if that's all they see everywhere they look, no matter how many cable channels they have, right? If that's what they see across the board on the newsstands and so on, they're gonna figure, well, that's what's out there, that's all there is. The 9/11 Truth Movement, which has taken a lot of abuse, has really only called for one thing, and it's a very reasonable thing. What the 9/11 Truth Movement really wants is a new investigation, a new commission, and that's all that I call for. Because the fact is that the official report is preposterous in countless ways.
It's a free show at the Keene High School. Take one of these and see what that's about. Keene High School this evening. Take one of these. I think you might. This is so central to the future of this country. There's no future, as far as I'm concerned, if we don't get to the bottom of this. I need a balance.
I would say yes. Find answers, the real truth.
I'm going to vote for it. I didn't know otherwise unless I would have came tonight, honestly. So I'd vote for it.
Just a little bit about the towers would have stood. Basically, it's impossible for the top 12 stories to have crushed the lower structure without acceleration. Physically impossible. And yet that's what you observe.
Two biggest tragedies that I can recall other than world wars concerning America was Kennedy's assassination and the attack on 9/11. And both remain completely unanswered.
This is to show what we can do and to regain.
That the whole reason they were here was because of the Pentagon shooter. And, you know, I think it's funny that, you know, we scream from the rooftops for years about needing justice and accountability, and we never get coverage. But the second someone decides to pick up a gun and go into the Pentagon metro station, all of a sudden we're press-worthy.
These are 1,100 who have staked their reputations and their licenses on the line based on this evidence for explosive controlled demolition of all 3 skyscrapers.
modern capitalism has, in my view, but that's a long story, reached the end of its rope, and it cannot survive as a system. And what we are seeing is the structural crisis of the system. So the structural crisis goes on for a long time. It really started, in my view, more or less in the 1970s. It will go on for another 20, 30, 40 years. It's not a crisis of a year or of a short moment. It's a major structural unfolding of a system, and we're in transition to another system. And in fact, the real political struggle that's going on in the world, though most people refuse to recognize it, is not about capitalism, should we have it or should we not have it, but what should replace it. Well, I would like a more relatively democratic, more relatively egalitarian world. That's one view. We've never had that in the history of the world. It's possible. The other view is that you have a very unequal, polarizing, exploitative system. It doesn't have to be capitalism. Capitalism is that, but you can do that in many other ways, some of which may be far worse than capitalism.
They represent the work of the world and the markets of the world. Not very evenly distributed, are they? And here are the industrial areas, where people produce goods, generally different goods in different countries. Not evenly spread around the world here either. And the resources used by these people in these industries, they are unevenly distributed.
Gaddafi once said, the Arab nation needs someone to make it weep and not laugh.
Across the trade lane,
that he has set himself to do.
from the countries producing more than they can use to other countries whose people want and need these things. Sometimes the balance is disrupted when governments impose trade restrictions, as when certain industries request protection, perhaps by a tariff wall, protection from foreign competition.
Another idea fundamental to capitalism is the profit motive. For the sake of profit, we cultivate the land. We build great factories to produce goods. We sell for profit. The goods thus produced, we transport over large distances.
Manned spacecraft into orbit within 24 hours of each other. The Soviets made the most of the flight in their worldwide propaganda and televised pictures of it.
América Latina, bueno, canta otra música y baila otro ritmo. Y estamos como que cantando nuestros propios coros, hemos comenzado a bailar nuestros propios ritmos, nos hemos comenzado a conseguir con nosotros mismos. Hay una línea de gobierno en América Latina y detrás pueblos enteros defendiendo nuestra independencia y la unión de América Latina. América Latina, hay que recordarlo, fue durante mucho tiempo como la llamaron, el patio trasero de los Estados Unidos. Y Estados Unidos se encargó durante todo el siglo XX y antes incluso. Hay que recordar que Estados Unidos invadió México, comenzando mucho antes de terminar el siglo XIX. Simón Bolívar lo había dicho, pero con una visión casi que profética, porque era muy temprano todavía, era 1825, y Simón Bolívar lanzó una frase: los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica parecen destinados por la providencia para plagar nuestra América de miseria a nombre de la libertad. Entonces Estados Unidos se encargó de eliminar, de cortar de raíz o de cabeza todo gobierno o casi todos los gobiernos que, bueno, que salieron o que surgieron haciendo otro planteamiento, la independencia. No hubo golpe de Estado en América Latina en 150 años donde no estuviese metida la mano del imperio norteamericano. Y además el imperio se cuidó de sembrar, ¿no?, los lacayos en cada país, las élites, de formar las élites, lo que llamamos los pitiyanquis. Entonces esa es una de las grandes contradicciones, un continente que tiene la voluntad de cambiar su modelo económico, por ejemplo. En Venezuela, te voy a poner el ejemplo de Venezuela. Tenemos 10 años impulsando los cambios. Es una revolución pacífica, una revolución democrática, una revolución absolutamente legítima, pero hay una élite allí económica que se resiste desde todos los puntos de vista y con todas las armas que puedan contra los cambios democráticos.
Estamos celebrando el triunfo del comandante Chávez.
Hemos dado todo por el comandante Chávez, porque Chávez es la revolución.
See, okay, that's good. Okay.
All I know is that he was kind. He was kind to the people in the United States, and I'm sure he rules differently, like Obama rules differently. And who are we to tell these people how they should live, or how? I mean, are they invading our country? But they're not. They're being generous to give us what comes out of their earth at no charge. So could you really have ill feelings against them? Yeah, I'm thankful for it. It's time that we stopped minding everybody else's business and took care of business here. We have children that are graduating from college with $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 that they have to pay back. It's ruining them, and they can't get a job.
Y este crecimiento, en un momento yo decía, Sudamérica está vestido de rojo. Es el sentimiento de los pueblos que algunos partidos, algunas agrupaciones, algunos líderes políticos recogen el gran sentimiento de los pueblos que vienen de un sufrimiento profundo. Por tanto, es nuestra obligación acompañar estos procesos de lucha, unas revoluciones democráticas, revoluciones no con balas, sino con el voto. Es lo que está pasando en Latinoamérica.
President Hugo Chavez died around 16:25, that's 4:45 p.m. Caracas time.
America.